Some humans unalive people due to a fantasy that they cultivated for years in their own minds. From this story, a villain captured over a dozen women, punishes them in various ways, and then tosses them into a pit, causing their immediate deletion. Watch until the end and you will see how this psycho created his own graveyard. Let's begin. One quiet evening in September of 1998, and in the country of Chile, an unnamed man drove around a local residential area repeatedly looking for trouble. He continued up and down every street as if he were looking for someone that he knew that was lost. Ironically, the kind of trouble he was looking for would just so happen to be where all the street workers would solicit their business. Her at the time was a 17-year-old female by the name of Montserrat Savina. It was never verified that she was an actual street worker, but she did proposition the unknown man for money. The strange man didn't know that Montserrat's ultimate intention was to rob him for his money, the first opportunity that she got. So Montserrat got into the vehicle and gave him instructions on where to drive in order to fulfill his fantasies. Filled with enthusiasm, the man told her all the intimate things that he wanted to experience from her. While en route, Montserrat continued to tell him everything she thought he wanted to hear. Little did he know that she was able to pickpocket him. Now, after stealing all of his valuables, she then planned to outrun him on foot as soon as the vehicle came to a stop. As the car finally came to a rest at an isolated beach, it was at that moment that the stranger realized that she stole all his money. This deception caused the man to become so angrily belligerent that he cursed and grabbed at the woman. He then commenced to beat Montserrat uncontrollably. The beating allegedly went on for several minutes as she started out screaming and then pleading for mercy non-stop. Eventually, the man became winded and began to calm himself down, but not before Montserrat was completely motionless. Allegedly, the strange man believed that he had beaten Montserrat until she was unalive. Afterwards, the man then drove away from the scene with no remorse. The unaliving of this young girl made him feel powerful. All of the stranger's life he had been taken advantage of, and this was the first time he was able to get revenge. A year later, a 13-year-old girl was being followed by a stranger in his vehicle as she was riding her bike home. That young girl's name was Marciana Sanchez. The stranger continued to follow until he was sure that no one was watching, so he approached her with a knife and threatened the child with it. Petrified with fear, she gave no resistance as he forced her into his vehicle. Now kidnapped and driven to an isolated location, he then assaulted her repeatedly as she screamed for her mommy. When the stranger was done victimizing the child, she was still very much alive. Not knowing what to do next, he bound her hands together behind her back as she cried and pled for her life. With no remorse in his heart, he shoved the girl back into the car and took her to another location. This part of the story is absolutely chilling, so I have to describe the location in detail for you to comprehend the type of evil it takes to unalive someone in this manner. After several minutes of driving, the stranger arrived at the Hugh Antajaya. The Hugh Antajaya happened to be an old abandoned silver mine. The entrance of this mine was just a large hole in the side of a mountain. If you were to peer into this hole, you would see nothing but absolute pitch darkness. But if you were to shine a flashlight into the hole, you will see that it's about a 22-meter, or conversion, a 724-foot drop. The only way to enter into this cave is to climb down this hole via rope. When the stranger arrived, he opened the door. He dragged Marciana out of the car, and then he mercilessly tossed her into the Hugh Antajaya. This young girl likely was begging and pleading to live as he continued to carry, raised her up in the air, and then tossed her into this hole while she screamed the entire time until she hit the bottom, ensuring her deletion. A year later, the stranger decided to go hunting for another victim. He kidnapped a girl by the name of Sarah Gomez, and 2 days later, another girl named Angelica Lay. Each one on a different day and location, he assaulted them and unalived them both. Afterwards, he then dumped their bodies in the middle of the desert. Now that the total of 4 children were missing, the media gave the killer the psychopath from Alto Hospital. The community began to put pressure on the police as they continued to downplay the girls from being missing and labeling them as just runaway street workers. In March, the stranger struck again and abducted a 14-year-old girl by the name of Laura. This victim suffered the same fate as the first victim. She was beaten, assaulted, and her arms were tied up behind her back. She was then carried alive and tossed into the Punt-Antajaya silver mine. Over the next 4 months, the stranger assaulted and unalived 4 more young girls and women in the same manner, one of which she sat on fire after unaliving her, and the others tossed into the Punt-Antajaya. They were assaulted, unalived, in the same manner as the others. The father of the victims mobilized all of the family members, along with the missing victims' relatives, to conduct a massive search of the entire city area. The victim's father even sold some of his possessions, along with his boat, in order to provide a bounty for the return of his daughter and/or the apprehension of the killer. The families were able to find several pieces of evidence from different missing victims that were located throughout the community. This intense search caused the actor to stop for fear of being captured. This hiatus lasted for 9 months. In April of 2001, the stranger attacked again and assaulted 2 additional girls. Both escaped as the actor tried to unalive them. They notified the police, gave description, and within a few hours, a man identified as Julio Perez was located and arrested. A sample of Julio's DNA was compared to the police file with positive results. When Julio was then interviewed and confronted with the evidence, he confessed to all of the disappearances of the young girls and women. He described every incident in detail and where all the bodies were disposed of. He was ultimately charged with 14 deletions along with 2 attempted deletions. He was found guilty and given a life imprisonment without the possibility of parole sentence.